It's a weird thing, right? You ever noticed how some of the wealthiest, most powerful people on the planet just disappear? One minute they're everywhere, the next they're just gone. Today, we're diving into this really strange and fascinating world of the vanishing billionaires. And that's the big question, isn't it? It's one that cracks open this whole universe of international crime, high-stakes politics, and just plain old unsolved mysteries. Are they running from something? Were they taken? Or is something else entirely going on? Let's get into it. So let's start with a really recent and pretty tragic story. The UK tech billionaire Mike Lynch. Now get this, he just gets acquitted in this massive, high-profile fraud trial. He's out on his yacht, celebrating, when a storm hits. His body is found later in the wreckage. Officially, a terrible accident. But you gotta admit, the timing, it leaves you with this uneasy feeling. Then you've got a guy like Chen Ji, a Chinese-Cambodian tech czar. This isn't just some rich guy. He was an official advisor to prime ministers. He completely vanished right as the US and the UK were launching this huge crackdown on what they say was his cyber fraud empire, which allegedly included forced labor scam compounds. And of course, how could we forget Jack Ma? I mean, this one was huge. The founder of Alibaba, one of the most famous businessmen in the world, literally went missing for months right after he publicly criticized Chinese financial regulators. He eventually reappeared, but only as his entire company was being taken apart by the government. So you see, these aren't just one-off stories. This is a real global pattern, and it tends to fall into three pretty distinct categories. Let's start with the most common reason a billionaire decides to just drop off the map. Okay, first up, the most straightforward reason of all. They become fugitives. When the law starts closing in, having $1 billion in the bank gives you a whole set of options that, most people can only dream about. And look, we're not talking about skipping out on a parking ticket here. A financial fugitive is accused of these enormous, complex economic crimes, and they use their insane resources to hop across borders, cook up new identities, and try to escape accountability for good. Chen Zi is just a perfect example of this. Prosecutors allege his whole legitimate business, the Prince Group, was basically just a front for a massive criminal operation. We're talking about those awful pig butchering scams run out of these prison-like compounds, a global money laundering network, and deep, deep political connections that kept him protected. And with at least 6 different passports, yep, he always had an exit plan. And if you want to understand the sheer scale we're talking about here, just look at this number, $15 billion. That's the value of the Bitcoin the U.S. Department of Justice tried to seize from Chen's network. It is the single largest forfeiture in the department's entire history. That just gives you a sense of the astronomical money involved. This pattern shows up again and again. Remember the horrible Seoul ferry disaster in South Korea? Over 300 people died, and the investigation immediately zeroed in on the ferry's owner, Yoo Byung-yoon. As the authorities started digging into negligence, embezzlement, tax evasion, you just vanished. It sparked this huge manhunt and a national outcry. All right, so that's running from the law, but what if you're not running? What if the state itself makes you disappear? This brings us to our second category, and honestly, there's no better place to see this in action than in China. And this quote right here, it really sums it all up perfectly. For decades, China's economy opened up, and it created this incredible private wealth. Well, now, the government under Xi Jinping is pulling that power back, sending a very clear message: no person and no company is bigger than the party. And you can see the playbook laid out right here. It's become almost predictable. A famous figure like Jack Ma criticizes the government, and poof, he's gone. He comes back, but he's humbled, and his empire is getting carved up. A real estate tycoon like Ren Zhiqiang speaks out against Xi. He gets 18 years in prison. An investment banker like Bao Fan disappears, and months later, all we hear is that he's cooperating with an investigation. The pattern is crystal clear, and it's meant to send a shiver down the spine of the entire private sector. So the key thing to get here is that this isn't random. This is a systematic campaign. They call it the shared prosperity agenda, but what it really is a deliberate crackdown on the tech sector and on private entrepreneurs who they feel have gotten way too rich and way too powerful. For them, making someone disappear for a while is just a tool of state policy. Okay, so we've covered fugitives and we've covered the state. Now we get to the really juicy stuff, the genuine mysteries. The cases where we honestly have no idea if the billionaire was a victim of foul play or the brilliant architect of their own great escape. And there's no better example of this than the German billionaire Karl Erich von Haab. I mean, look at this. The official story is a tragic, lonely skiing accident on the Matterhorn. But then you start digging and the questions are just mind-blowing. He had these deep, murky business ties to Russia. There were these unconfirmed sightings of him in Moscow after he supposedly died. And now there are even documents suggesting some bizarre potential connection to the whole Jeffrey Epstein saga. And here's another one that just screams planned escape. Let's walk through the timeline with the Swedish billionaire Karl Erik Bjorkegren. First step, total financial ruin. We're talking a catastrophic bankruptcy. Then there are reports of threats being made against his family. And finally, just hours before a crucial meeting, he and his luggage disappear from his home. Not a trace. So was it foul play by angry business partners? Or did he use all that chaos as the perfect cover to just start a new life? We'll probably never know. So after all these wild stories, what's the big picture? What does this all really tell us? Because these aren't just crazy tales. They reveal something fundamental about what extreme wealth is and the kind of dangerous attention it brings. So when you boil it all down, we've really seen three main scenarios, right? You've got those using their fortunes to run from the law. You have those who are disappeared by a government that sees their wealth as a threat. And then you have the others, where their money creates this world of mystery, either giving someone a motive to get rid of them or giving them the tools to pull off the perfect vanishing act. And that, right there, is the biggest takeaway for me. We all tend to think of $1 billion as the ultimate security blanket, right? A shield from all the world's problems. But these stories show it can be the exact opposite. That kind of money can act like its own force of gravity, pulling in all sorts of dangers, prosecutors, authoritarian regimes, unknown enemies, and it makes you a giant target in a very, very dangerous game. Which leaves us with one last, really big question to chew on. When you have everything, are you actually free? Or does that level of wealth and power just build its own kind of prison around you? One where the walls are invisible, but maybe, just maybe, all the exits have disappeared. Something to think about.